Every major football tournament, much like every Lloyds Bank advert, has a dark horse. An unfancied team coming into the tournament who surprise everyone with their performances, results, or both. Denmark reached the semi-finals of Euro 2020, only losing in extra time against England. Iceland made the quarter-finals of Euro 2016, beating England, while Wales made it all the way through to the semis. Russia and Turkey both reached the semi-finals of Euro 2008, and Greece, who were rank outsiders going into the tournament, went all the way and won Euro 2004, following in the footsteps of Denmark at Euro 92, who staged a similar upset, winning at Euros, which they had failed to actually qualify for. Well, as we head into Euro 2024, there's another potential dark horse that I want to talk about. You can get odds of up to 150 to 1 on Hungary winning the Euros. That's longer odds than you'll get on the likes of Serbia, Turkey, and Ukraine. That's despite the fact that Hungary haven't lost a competitive game of football since September 2022, over 18 months ago. When Marco Rossi was appointed by the Hungarian Football Federation back in 2018, Hungary were ranked 51st in the FIFA World Rankings, sandwiched between titans of the international game, Cameroon and Burkina Faso. The national team had only qualified for one major tournament in the last 30 years. Recent results, before Rossi's appointment, included defeats against Kazakhstan, Luxembourg, and Andorra, the latter against a nation of fewer than 80,000 people, constituting the nation's most humiliating defeat of all time, as well as draws with Belarus, twice, and the Faroe Islands. Hungarian football, it would be fair to say, was at an all-time low. In the 6 years since Rossi arrived, Hungary have risen to 26th in the most recent world rankings, climbing above Sweden and Poland. They were one of only 6 teams to go invincible throughout Euro 2024 qualifying, along with England, Belgium, France, Portugal, and Romania. And they have recorded famous victories against Croatia, Germany, and England twice. The 4-0 home defeat that Hungary inflicted upon England wasn't just England's heaviest defeat of the Gareth Southgate era, but their heaviest home defeat since 1928. 96 years ago, bettering even Hungary's own 6-3 win at Wembley back in 1953, in the so-called match of the century. At that time, Hungary had the best team in world football, and quite possibly the greatest of all time. And in the reverse fixture in Budapest in 1954, they beat England 7-1. Between 1950 and 1956, Hungary's golden team played 69 matches. They won 58, drew 10, and only lost one of them, the 1954 World Cup final, scoring 436 goals, or an average of more than 6 goals a game, over 6 years, revolutionising football in the process with a fluid style of total football and a team that was blessed with some of the finest players of all time. It would be hard for Hungary, or any team for that matter, ever to return to those heights, but now Hungary's methodical, if not quite as magical Magyars, are roaring once again, and I find it strange that more people aren't talking about it. I think that they could be one of the most intriguing teams at this tournament, in the most competitive group at the Euros, I believe. So today, I intend to put that right. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey to Budapest. Yes, there I am, in Budapest, as we take a look at the resurgence of Hungarian football, the controversial influence that Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has had upon the sport, and Hungary's tactics, players, and prospects at Euro 2024. Hungary's golden generation effectively ended with the Hungarian uprising of 1956, in which 3,000 civilians were killed and more than 200,000 people fled the country. In a nation of fewer than 10 million people, that is a pretty significant exodus. Among those displaced, or voluntarily exiled, included some of Hungary's best footballers. Zoltán Szkibor settled in Italy, then Spain, leaving Budapest Honvéd to represent the likes of Roma, Barcelona, and Espanyol. Former teammate Sandor Kocsis first headed to Switzerland, followed by Spain, where he was reunited with Szkibor at Barcelona, and starman Ferenc Puskás was banned by UEFA for 2 years for refusing to return to Hungary, joining Real Madrid, where he averaged a goal a game and won 3 European Cups, once his ban had expired. That marked the end of one of the best teams of all time, but not of Hungary still having a respectable status within the world of football. They qualified for 6 of the next 8 World Cups, having been losing finalists in 1954, and actually went into a couple of tournaments, namely Euro 64 and the 1986 World Cup, as one of the favourites, boasting players of the calibre of József Kiprik and Ballon d'Or winner Florian Albert. That all changed with the fall of communism in Hungary in 1989. Almost in an instant, funding for football and other sports, which had been falling gradually since the 1950s, was slashed or totally eradicated. Infrastructure was allowed to rot, youth development was neglected, and once proud football clubs like MTK, Ferencváros, Újpest and Honvéd became withering husks of their former selves. In the 1989-90 season, Budapest Honvéd, once the club of Ferenc Puskás, Sándor Kocsis, József Bozik, Zoltán Szkibor and Gyula Grosic, some of Hungary's and indeed Europe's greatest players of all time, lost 9-0 over 2 legs in the European Cup against Benfica. The state of Hungarian football, once a source of immense pride, had become a national humiliation. Hungary didn't qualify for a single Euros or World Cup in the post-communism era until 2016, when the number of teams at the Euros was increased from 16 to 24. In the early 2000s, the first steps towards rectifying the ailing condition of Hungarian football began. In 2001, MTK opened the Sándor Károlyi Football Academy, Hungary's first state-of-the-art youth development centre. Named after MTK legend Sándor Károlyi, who won 75 caps for Hungary's golden team, the project was the brainchild of musician-turned-businessman Gábor Varsigi. Varsigi invested in MTK when the club was at its lowest ebb during the 1990s, having been relegated from Hungary's top flight and on the verge of bankruptcy. His influence and resources returned MTK to the summit of the Hungarian game, but his greatest legacy was what he did with their youth facilities. Varsigi visited 25 of the world's leading football academies before signing off on the plans for the Sándor Károlyi Football Academy, studying their layout and day-to-day operations. He also placed academy graduates at the heart of MTK's long-term project, rarely missing a youth team game and encouraging promotion from within. The end result was over 100 players graduating from the Sándor Károlyi Football Academy into the professional game, either with MTK or elsewhere, over 20 of whom went on to represent the national team. MTK's academy success didn't go unnoticed. Liverpool formed a partnership with them in 2007, signing 3 MTK players, Andras Seaman, Christian Nemeth and Peter Galacsi, and before long, several leading Hungarian clubs were looking to follow in their footsteps. In 2005, meanwhile, a national youth development project was launched by the Hungarian Football Federation, known as the Bozik Programme. Named after József Bozik, another star of Hungary's golden team and one of the greatest midfielders of all time, the programme was split up into 3 categories. One was for 5 to 12-year-olds, just encouraging them to get into football and to enjoy themselves, with a focus on fun and honing their technical skills rather than results. The next was for 10 to 14-year-olds, which was the first stage of selection based upon talent, providing professional coaching and looking to maximise development. And the final stage, described as an elite programme, covered the most talented 15 to 19-year-olds with targeted expert coaching, looking to prepare youngsters for careers within the professional game, and, for the very best of them, representing the national team. Following 2 decades of failure, Hungary's focus and investment in youth development began to herald results. The clearest sign yet of Hungary's progress came at the 2009 Under-20 World Cup in Egypt, where Hungary finished 3rd, beating the likes of Italy and the Czech Republic en route to the semi-finals, and only losing there against eventual winners Ghana, who beat Brazil in the final. A year later, however, something even more significant happened. Viktor Orbán, the opportunist former liberal turned populist hard-right politician, won a landslide victory in Hungary's parliamentary elections. Orbán had been Prime Minister of Hungary once before, between 1998 and 2002, but whereas in 1998 he led a weak coalition government with his party, Fidesz, not even having won the most votes in the election, in 2010 he won by a landslide. Orbán is obsessed with football. He played in the fourth tier in his younger years, before focusing on a career in politics, and even appeared on Football Manager 2006 after he was registered as a player by FC Feljut. More on them in a moment. After he was first elected Prime Minister in 1998, Orbán's first foreign visit was to France for the 1998 World Cup. It's said that he hasn't missed either a World Cup or Euros final since then, and sometimes watches up to 6 games a day. Can't be doing much work, can he? Orbán's son, Gaspar, also pursued a career in football, making a grand total of 12 appearances and spending 347 minutes on the pitch in the top 2 tiers of Hungarian football over a 3-year professional career, before having a spiritual epiphany. That epiphany wasn't that he wasn't very good at football and only ever played 3 games for Puskás Akadémia in the top flight because of his father's political position and control of the club, but that he had received a religious calling. Gaspar quit football in 2014 therefore, converting to Hungary's faith church and becoming an evangelical minister. Gaspar may have a higher calling these days, but football and kleptocracy remain the 2 great loves in Orbán's life. And since his landslide victory in 2010, he has found a way to combine them both. Feljut is a sleepy village, about 40 minutes west of Budapest. Home to barely 1,500 people, before Orbán's election, it was indistinguishable from hundreds of similar Hungarian villages. And in some ways, it still is. It has a row of residential properties surrounded by farmland, a petrol station, a post office, and a convenience store. You will have to head a couple of minutes outside of the village to find the nearest supermarket. There is just one thing that marks Feljut out as being abnormal among sleepy little Hungarian villages though, and that is a state-of-the-art football stadium opened in 2014. Built at a cost of almost 4 billion Hungarian forints, or roughly £10 million, the Pancho Arena, named after the nickname that Real Madrid fans gave Ferenc Puskás, has a capacity which is twice the size of the village in which it is situated, but its size isn't the strangest thing about it. The Pancho Arena is maybe the most luxurious stadium in Central Europe, built to cater not to locals, most of whom support one of the established Budapest clubs, but to Orbán and his cronies. The VIP car park at the front of the stadium has reserved spots for billionaires Laszlo Szigyi, István Garancsi and Sándor Csányi, who is also the president of the Hungarian Football Federation, as well as one for Orbán himself, of course. There are 2 spaces reserved for Lawrence Mészáros, who was the mayor of Feljut when the stadium was built. Mészáros is a childhood friend of Orbán's, who coincidentally went from working as a gas fitter, whose firm was on the verge of bankruptcy before Orbán's election, to being the 3rd richest person in Hungary, amassing a fortune of more than $1.3 billion as of 2022 during Orbán's reign. In the first few years of Orbán's second premiership, Mészáros' wealth was doubling on an annual basis. Amid accusations of corruption and being a straw person for Orbán, Mészáros, who is often described as being an oligarch, stated, quote, "My fortune is thanks to 3 factors: God, luck, and Viktor Orbán." End quote.
Oh my god! He admitted it!
I mean, it's not a particularly powerful denial, is it? Mészáros is just one of many people close to Orbán to have gotten very rich since his election victory in 2010, and football is a tie that runs through almost all of them. Orbán actually began playing for Feljut FC in 1999, shortly after he was first elected Prime Minister, as a 36-year-old, down in the 6th tier of Hungarian football. In 2002, the year that Orbán was voted out of office, despite their lowly status, Feljut were awarded one of the Hungarian Football Federation's regional youth development centres, which some have speculated might have had something to do with Orbán's power and connections. In 2005, following a series of promotions, Feljut reached the 2nd tier of Hungarian football. A 42-year-old Orbán was forced to hang up his boots, no longer physically, and never having been technically competent enough to play at that high of a level, and after narrowly losing the 2006 elections, he became Felchut's club president. Orbán's self-appointment as president in 2007 coincided with a raft of political gaffes by the ruling Hungarian Socialist Party, including a leaked private speech in which Prime Minister Ferenc Gyurcsány admitted to lying to the Hungarian people in the last election. From that point onwards, all polls clearly indicated that Orbán and his Fidesz-KDNP alliance, as it was at the time, were going to win a landslide in 2010, and as a result, money from businesses and individuals keen to curry favour with the soon-to-be all-powerful Hungarian Prime Minister began flooding money into enterprises associated with him, including Felchut FC, who landed a number of sponsorship deals and investments that were highly lucrative and unusual by second-tier village team in Hungary standards. Since 2004, Orbán had been working on a project to found a football academy in Felchut, which would function as both a boarding school and a youth development centre. The academy was established in 2005, and in November 2006, 9 days after Hungary's most famous son, certainly in a football sense, if not in any field, Ferenc Puskás died, the academy was renamed Puskás Akadémia. Orbán had sought Puskás's permission to use his name before he died, but the former Honvéd star was in no shape to make such a decision. His wife, however, granted Orbán permission, meanwhile a friend of his, the sports journalist György Szalósi, was handed control of the Puskás trademark and 45% of the revenue from its use, which has since been used on a whole raft of Orbán-related and state-funded football projects. Initially, the Puskás Academy was affiliated with Fehérvár FC, or Videoton FC as they were then, a second-tier team owned by billionaire and close Orbán associate István Garancsi, but in the 2012-13 season, they became an independent club. In their debut campaign, Puskás Academy won the Western Group of the NB2, Hungary's second tier, and with that, promotion to the top flight of Hungarian football. In the last 5 years, this team from a tiny Hungarian village, whose lavish stadium literally backs onto Orbán's private country estate, has finished third, second, third, fourth, and third again in the top flight of Hungarian football, competing in both the Europa League and the UEFA Europa Conference League by virtue of their league finishes. Some have drawn comparisons between Orbán's relationship and direct involvement in Puskás Akadémia FC with Turkey's fellow football fanatic authoritarian president Recep Tayyip Erdogan's relationship with Istanbul Başakşehir. But Orbán's influence over Hungarian football extends far beyond even Erdogan's in Turkey. When he was elected in 2010, he promised to revive Hungarian sport that had been left to rot since the end of communism, especially football. Part of that plan was a radical reform of Hungarian corporation tax, which included allowing companies to divert a percentage of their taxable profits into sports teams in exchange for sizable tax breaks. In theory, it's an intelligent way of increasing private investment in sport, which, when done right, can be a significant social good. In practice, whilst it has increased investments in football, the scheme, by design many people would argue, has proved ripe for corruption. Since Orbán was re-elected in 2010, 21 new football stadiums, with a capacity in excess of 3,000, have either been built or rebuilt in Hungary, including 7 stadiums with capacities in excess of 11,000. The culmination of Orbán's pet project is the Puskás Arena in Budapest, bearing the great man's name once again, of course, which was based loosely on the Allianz Arena in Munich, has a capacity of 67,215 and cost almost €600 million to build. The Puskás Arena has already hosted 4 games at Euro 2020, the 2023 UEFA Europa League final, and it will host the 2026 Champions League final. Hungary is now a kleptocracy. The media, business, and even the judiciary are all now controlled by Orbán and his close allies, and football is no exception. Of the 12 teams in Hungary's top flight, only one of them, historic giants Újpest, who were almost relegated this season, aren't owned and operated by someone with close ties to Orbán. Of course, for democracy, that isn't great. The European Parliament recently declared that Hungary can no longer be considered a full democracy. Meanwhile, Freedom House downgraded the country to a transitional or hybrid regime in light of recent democratic backsliding. But for football infrastructure, youth development, and standard of competition, however dubious the means, Orbán's regime has improved things. You're still thinking about the democracy, aren't you? The domestic league has become more competitive and professional, there is less violence in the stands, top flight attendances are up over 40% since he re-entered office, and Hungarian teams are once again able to inspire some pride in Europe. Ferencváros reached the Champions League group stage in the 2020-21 season, the Europa League round of 16 last season, and the Conference League knockout stage this season, beating the likes of Celtic, Dinamo Zagreb, Bayer Leverkusen, Red Star Belgrade, and Monaco in the process. Whereas Hungary's first generation of promising youngsters, including many of those who made the semi-finals of the 2009 Under-20 World Cup, made early moves to big European clubs where they didn't play and saw their careers and development fizzle out, the current generation appear to have learnt from those lessons and are a bit more cautious about where they move. Starman Dominik Szoboszlai left Hungary at the age of 16, but unlike Nemeth or Galacsi, who went straight from MTK to Liverpool and never played, practically speaking, Szoboszlai joined Red Bull Salzburg, a club that is renowned for youth development and giving young players opportunities, before joining their sister club RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga, and eventually Liverpool. He set the Reds back £60 million last summer, but made 45 appearances for the Premier League Giants this season, and enjoyed a very impressive debut campaign. It should be said, whilst huge strides have been made in terms of Hungary's internal youth development, convincing foreign-born but eligible players to represent them has also been key to their recent success. The Hungarian Football Federation, like a lot of football associations these days, closely monitor any young players who are eligible to represent Hungary and attempt to convince the most talented ones to do just that. RB Leipzig's Willi Orbán, no relation, who is probably Hungary's second best and most important player behind Szoboszlai, was born in Germany and represented Germany at under 21 level. 20-year-old left wing-back Milos Kerkez, who just enjoyed an excellent debut campaign in the Premier League with Bournemouth, was born in Serbia, and experienced Le Havre right-back Loic Nejo, who previously had short stints with both Roma and Charlton Athletic, was born in Paris and represented France at under 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20 level. Hungary convinced all three to represent them instead, and all three are expected to start for them at the Euros. Meanwhile, young Hertha Berlin centre-back Martin Dardai, who was born in Berlin and represented Germany all the way through, from under 16 to under 21 level, has also made Hungary's squad for the Euros, which is being hosted in the country where he was born, raised, and continues to live and ply his trade. The work that's been done behind the scenes is undoubtedly impressive, but it is Marco Rossi, since his appointment in 2018, on the pitch and on the training ground, who has had the biggest impact of all. An Italian, but one who's never been afraid to travel for work, Rossi began coaching Budapest Honvéd in 2012 through a rather bizarre turn of events. Honvéd finished third in Rossi's debut campaign, but after the club fell to ninth in his second season, he resigned. They fared even worse without him the following season, however, prompting owner, former Fidesz politician and, of course, Orbán ally, Zoltán Bozzo, to ask him to come back. Rossi accepted, and it was in his second stint at Honvéd that he illustrated the breadth of his managerial abilities. Pragmatic, innovative, and extremely disciplined, Rossi struck upon a winning formula of fast counter-attacking football, combined with a regimented defensive shape out of possession, which led Honvéd to winning a surprise league title. A brief stint managing in Slovakia followed at a team with a majority Hungarian ethnic and speaking fan base, before the Hungarian Football Federation offered him the national team job. Rossi's counter-attacking style, honed with Honvéd, has proven to be the perfect grounding for managing the national team, leading to those shock victories against the likes of England, Germany and Croatia. Hungary play with 3 defenders, or 3 centre-backs if you like, and 2 holding midfielders, which creates a narrow bank of 5 out of possession, which even some of the international game's best teams have found incredibly tough to break down. The remaining 5 players, meanwhile, are given licence to go forward and to break at speed when Hungary win the ball back. The wing-backs, foreign-born Milos Kerkez and Lojnejo, are crucial to everything that Hungary do. They hug the touchline, looking to stretch the pitch, and creating the room for Dominik Szoboszlai and Roland Salai, probably Hungary's 2 most gifted players, to operate in. In front of them is Barnabas Varga, one of modern football's great late bloomers. Varga was playing predominantly reserve team football for an Austrian club that no longer even exists until the age of 25, when, in 2019, he joined second-tier Austrian outfit SV Lafnitz. He returned to Hungary the following season, and in 2022-23, he surprised everyone by comfortably winning the NBA Golden Boot, bagging 26 goals for a pack side that only scored 57 goals all season, and 29 goals in 33 games in all competitions. That led to a move to Hungarian champions Ferencváros last summer, where Varga just scored 29 goals in all competitions for the 2nd successive campaign, including 9 goals in 13 games in Europe. In March 2023, at the age of 28, he made his international debut. A rare old-school poacher, Varga isn't the quickest, strongest, and has zero interest in getting involved in build-up play, but he is willing to press from the front out of possession when asked. He is absolutely dynamite in the air, and he possesses an ever more lethal right foot. It puts him in almost direct contrast to Hungary's former number 9, Adam Szalai, a 6'4" target man who wasn't the most prolific but loved to bring others into the game, and it is testament to Rossi and Hungary's versatility that they have made such a seamless transition between the 2 totally contrasting focal points since Szalai's retirement. In goal, meanwhile, Peter Galacsi is a 2-time Hungarian Footballer of the Year, their vice-captain, and one of the national team's most recognisable players, but there are increased calls domestically for Ferencváros's number 1 Denis Debus to get the nod ahead of him at the Euros, and it is not unthinkable that Rossi may do just that. Galacsi started Hungary's recent warm-up game against Ireland, but Debus replaced him at half-time. Christopher Horvat's inclusion in Hungary's Euro squad, meanwhile, is one of the feel-good stories of the tournament. Diagnosed with lymph node cancer at the age of only 13, Horvat reportedly came close to dying before making a full recovery and embarking upon a career in football. He has spent the last 3 seasons on loan at Hungarian clubs from his parent club Torino, and the 22-year-old has made Marco Rossi's squad with only 2 caps to his name. He is one of a handful of young players in the Hungary squad, which will be one of the most experienced overall, in terms of international caps, at Euro 2024, with Marco Rossi having built a consistent and close-knit squad, which almost has the feel of a club side. Those are lots of reasons to be positive about Hungary heading into Euro 2024, and as you've probably gathered, I think that they are quite compelling. But by the same token, it is important to acknowledge their limitations. Their double pivot at the Euros, which is so important in Rossi's system, will be made up of 2 of Ondrej Schaefer, who was almost relegated with Union Berlin this season, former Bristol City man Adam Nagy, who struggled on loan at Serie B side Spezia this season, and English-born utility man Callum Stiles, who played in League One and the Championship for Barnsley and Sunderland this season. There is genuine quality, with the likes of Orbán, Szoboszlai and Salai, but the reality is Rossi, who is now a naturalised Hungarian citizen, offered a job for life by the Hungarian Football Federation, has worked miracles. On paper, Hungary have the weakest squad and starting 11 in Group A, where they will be competing against the host Germany, a resurgent Scotland, and major tournament knockout stage regulars Switzerland. It's why Hungary are simultaneously my Euro 2024 dark horses, but I also don't think you could be that surprised, and I wouldn't be, if they were to go out in the group stage. I mean, how's that for sitting on the fence? Germany are unpredictable coming into Euro 2024. When Hungary beat them in September 2022, they were in the midst of their darkest period since the Nazi era. Sorry, that sounds awfully dramatic, I should clarify, their darkest period in terms of football, as Germany, even after annexing Austria, were very bad under the Third Reich. I'm not drawing any comparison between Germany's poor form and results between 2018 to 2023 with the atrocities of the Nazi era, just so that we're absolutely clear. Please don't put that in the newspaper. Since that September 2022 defeat, which was followed by defeats against Japan, twice, Belgium, Poland, Colombia, Turkey and Austria, Germany have had a mini resurgence. The likes of Florian Wirtz and Jamal Musiala have clicked in a national team shirt, Kai Havertz has grown into the false nine position, and Toni Kroos announced his return to the national team, bolstering Germany's midfield in what will be his farewell following one of the classiest and most decorated careers of the modern era. Germany are unbeaten in 2024, including victories against France and the Netherlands, inspiring a fresh wave of optimism that had been sorely lacking ahead of a tournament on home soil. We ought not forget that Germany are the most successful national team in Europe and have been desperate to avenge their failure to win the Euros as hosts ever since 1988. Switzerland might be eminently forgettable. Sorry to any Swiss people that might be watching, I don't mean it in a personal way, but their consistency at major tournaments is almost without peer. They have reached the round of 16 at 4 of the last 5 World Cups, dating all the way back to when Germany hosted it in 2006, including each of the last 3, and the knockout stage of Euro 2016 and Euro 2020, famously overcoming France in the round of 16 last time around, and only losing against Spain in the quarter-finals on penalties. They are unlikely to win it, you'd imagine, but underestimate them in the group stage at your own peril. As for Scotland, they had a phenomenal qualifying campaign, famously beating Spain 2-0 at Hampden Park, and qualifying comfortably ahead of a Norway team starring Erling Haaland and Martin Ødegaard, and a Georgia side that went on to qualify via the playoffs due to their success in the UEFA Nations League. Whereas Hungary's midfield draws upon players in Serie B in the Championship, Scotland have named 5 Premier League midfielders in their squad, and the 3 probable starters, John McGinn, Callum McGregor and Scott McTominay, will all be playing European football next season. If you want a hot take, mine is that Hungary's opening game against Switzerland is likely to define their European Championship. I think Germany will be too strong for them, and if they don't get anything against the Swiss, it will put an awful lot of pressure on their finale against Scotland, with even a victory potentially not enough to progress. One thing is for certain, Hungary won't fear anyone. And why should they? They might have an inferior squad, on paper, but in light of their recent giant killings, an invincible qualifying campaign, and the confidence that Marco Rossi has cultivated within the Hungary dressing room, they won't suffer from an inferiority complex. That is almost it for today's video, and to be totally honest with you, as I have been known to in the past, I probably bit off a little bit more than I could chew. To truly do it justice, the intertwining of football and politics, the complexities and controversies of Hungary's broader rise in footballing terms, and how they relate to Orbán's authoritarian rule probably ought to have been a video of its own, along with Hungary's prospects at Euro 2024, Marco Rossi, their tactics, players, and why they are my dark horses, or at least I am very intrigued by them, in order to do both topics justice. It may be an interesting idea to visit the luxurious Pancho Arena for a Puskás Akadémia FC game for my second channel and explore the first half of this video in a bit more depth. Or maybe, after this video, that would just get me arrested or killed. Budapest is one of my favourite cities that I've ever visited, and I've always found Hungarians, except those guys, to be incredibly warm, welcoming and friendly. And it also just feels like a video that would sit perfectly on that channel, in light of the first one, about the 250,000 capacity Great Strahov Stadium that intertwined the history and politics of the Czech Republic and the former Czechoslovakia with football. Anyway, enough rambling, but make sure that you are subscribed, of course, to both this and my second channel, Alfie Botsama, if you haven't already. A link to do so is about to appear on your screens, along with that video that I just mentioned, and another one on this channel that YouTube's AI algorithm has decided that you might like. Thank you all very much, as ever, for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. I hope that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And of course, you can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads via the username at HITC Sevens. All of those links, plus a whole lot more, should be down in the video description below. And, hey, there are those videos and my second channel that I mentioned. Cheers!